Shelley, and welcome everybody to the work session for April the 14th, 2026. Let's call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Alderman Blanton is absent. Alderman Caesar.
Present.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Vice Mayor Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor is here. So we have item next is citizen comments. I have no speaker cards there, so we'll go right into item number 1, which is resolution 2026-14 to approve a mural at Station Pizzeria.
Hi,
Monday.
this is a resolution to approve a mural at 7007 Moores Lane, and that is at Station Pizzeria. All upkeep and installation will be the responsibility of the property owner, and Arts Commission recommends it 9-0 unanimously.
Any questions? Go ahead, Alderman Potts.
Thank you.
It is,
Okay,
yes.
Just to clarify, this is the item that had been sent back by the board. You had some concerns
I'm sorry,
about.
this is not that
not?
particular
Okay,
one,
I
no.
thought- okay.
This one was originally submitted to Building and Neighborhood Services as a sign.
Okay.
And so they redid it and came back with a more artistic mural, and then it came to Public Arts Commission.
Okay. I thought it was the one.
Yeah.
Is that one still coming through?
We are still working
Okay.
through that one.
Okay.
So I just had a couple of quick questions on this one. I was looking at this and I was seeing the paint and how it was exposed and everything. My long-term concern, and I recognize that the Art Commission approved this and they like it, is upkeep and maintenance on the exterior of this building, because it looked like there was a combination of where the paint was going to be applied to the building, and then also it looked like there were some I-beams that had been artistically turned that they
Right.
were going to be using as well. And then along the exterior of the building, there were individualized, like 4 foot by maybe 6 foot tall murals working their way down the wall. So could you speak to that, or is that something from the Art Commission?
Yeah, the Arts Commission did review all of that, and they thought that it would be fine and that the upkeep could be done by the property owner. There is one, I believe, that's inside of the building. It's just, you can see it from the street, but then there's also on the outside of the building as well.
Okay. Alderman Berger, do you have a comment?
Yeah. I'm not sure what I should comment on because I'm having a hard time with this one. And it's on the side of the building there?
Part of it's on the
It's
side
front.
and part is inside, yes.
Inside and outside, but it's on the side of the building, not the front? The way it was situated?
Yeah, it's kind of on the side, yes. It still faces Moore's Lane.
It's kind of in there.
Slide 8.
I think I'll keep my comments to myself. I'm not sure I can vote for this one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty
Keep
funky.
moving along then. Item 2 is update discussion on the South Clean Water Facility timeline.
This is a follow-up. We'd had a request from the board to just sort of give you an overview of where we were in terms of process for the planning for the South Clean Water Plant. And so we want to give you an overview. Things are moving along. Again, we're targeting this for around the 2034, 2035 timeframe for bringing that additional plant and treatment capacity online, and would be the first of what could potentially be 6 million gallon a day components to a clean water facility in the southeast part of Franklin. So Michelle's going to take you through that.
Okay. Hi there. Okay, so this is, as Eric was talking about, this is kind of more of the planning level update, and then we'll have a financial update in a couple board meetings to come as we're still working through some of those details. So it's just a little bit of background. The initial contract, the initial kind of evaluation contract, if you remember, was approved in 2020, so height of online meetings. So it was with Hazen to kind of perform that at capacity, kind of where we were going as a system, what some of the treatment options. Part of that scope was to do the demonstration facility as well. And then came along ARPA. We received a $5.6 million competitive ARPA grant, so we actually had to apply for it. And then, so specifically for reuse, so the way kind of ARPA umbrella was, they had, TDEC had allocated some money for different kind of resiliency projects. We received, so 5.6 million was the largest amount of a reuse grant that TDEC had given out. So that was pretty exciting. Some of the timeline, so the timeline that ARPA started allowed us to, it kind of happened in the center of when, or it was a handful of months after the Hazen work had started. So we started getting reimbursed for all of that work, the construction of the demonstration facility. And then you approved an amendment a handful of BOMA meetings ago for Hazen to finish up that work, which is the last part of that competitive grant work. So that's still, we're still finishing up that, covering ARPA needs to be done by July of this year, so we're still on track to meet that. So as Eric was talking about, the alternative that you all selected was the construction of a 6 MGD facility, and that alternative included, so in that 6 is 2 million gallons of the advanced treatment, and the intention of that is to be able to go to the reservoir to provide a resilient water source. Our tentative plans are our facility would be online by 2034, and that would be capacity until 2049. So we're dealing with some pretty long timeframes here. There was the resolution of intent that was passed last year to plan, design, construct, and then operate the facility. So just to kind of bring this up to speed with where we are. So I know you all are working with this on the CMAR or on the City Hall project, but just to kind of give you some highlights of why we're intending to use CMAR on the plan of this job. So I know it'll be the largest capital project that we undergo. We can start work on it early, much like City Hall, right? That's kind of one of the benefits of it. Some of those early, grading and earthwork kind of things we can do early. But one of the greatest things that we're looking at it is the guaranteed maximum price is it can be set, and then we can work to stay underneath that, right? So if we're getting to that point, we know that we need to pull back a little bit and maybe do some reevaluation of some options. So back when we did the other plant on Claude Yates, we did a traditional design bid build, right? Where we put it out for bid and you got what you got. We didn't, we pulled it back. We tried to pull it back a little bit the second time we bid it, but we were stuck with what we got. This is going to help us stay within those constraints a little bit better. Everything is the way that we're going to approach it is very an open book. So the contractor has to maintain kind of transparency and wants us to build the plant, right? So they're going to do everything they can for us to build the plant, because the option is for us to take that off ramp, which is not what they want to do, right? So there is a little bit of benefit, and you may already know this from the City Hall project, but that's kind of what we're shooting for. Let's see. So because the South Plant does not fall within our water district, there are a handful of other projects that we need to do in preparation for that. So one of them, you probably saw it as you were driving kind of on 65, north on 65. We had to lay a water line from the park all the way down to tie into Goose Creek or to Long Lane, really. So that work has been completed. So we planned that, designed that. That needed to be done for the park to be able to go vertical, for the structures to be created. So that's already been done. We are doing, right now in design, there is another water main that's coming from the north side of Matt Catcher down through Oakwood somewhere. We're still working on the exact alignment of that. That's going to tie into Lewisburg, right there at Ascot Lane. That's still in the planning phase. Construction, we'd like to see if we can start knocking some of that off as well. There's another one that's going to go from the west side of 65 to the east side of 65 once we can get the bore underneath the interstate with the park project done. So that's the third project that has to be done. And then we have these labeled as realignment projects, right? So we need to also figure out where that flow split is going to occur and start pulling flow south to the South Plant as well. That will likely have to be done in conjunction with the plant being built. We can't do that prior because I can't send flow south if I don't have a plant there, right? That makes sense. But we might need to send more than just Red Wing to that point. So our intention is just to turn Red Wing around, but we might need to go more into the system and pull that down. But also the intent with that is we're doing as much as needed right now, but most of that, if that's to occur when we look at development and how that occurs in the system, for that to be developer-led infrastructure to do some of those improvements. Okay, so just to revisit some of those flow projections that I know when we passed impact fees, there was a large discussion on continually evaluating this. Our average flow rate has increased since we began looking at this. So back in 2020, It is, so we're now at about a 13.34 MGD. So our plant capacity is 16 MGD. So we're right on track where we think we should be. The population is continuing to grow. But what we did is when we pulled that back into looking at how many houses are in the 2025 planning report, we come up with a 343 single family unit equivalent, right? So our basis for impact fee methodology is 350 gallons, right, per single family unit. So we're on track with that. So this is a calculation that we're continually doing to ensure that we're still within those projections. So we talked about the 2025 development report. So the planning period for that report was from 2015 to 2025. It shows that the housing has increased about close to 9,000 units, which is a 31% increase. When you pull that over 10 years, it's about a 3% increase. So in our most recent cost of service study, we had assumed a 3% growth annually. So we're still on track with that. So everything is meshing out fairly well. So the operations, one of the resolution that was presented, that was voted upon last January, we had talked about operating it. This is pretty up in the air, right? Because we're a bit away. But we looked at kind of when we intend to need to bring operators online, when we're going to see that ramping up a little bit. And so we have estimated about 3 operators per shift, potentially 4, depending on how the plant gets split up. But we won't know that obviously until we get further into design. So that's a minimum of 9 operators, potentially 12. Let's see. We would obviously need another administrative assistant. We would need a superintendent and assistant superintendent, and then probably a minimum of 2 dedicated maintenance staff for the maintenance that we have. The superintendents would be brought online about 6 months prior to kind of get them acclimated to the operator training and what our expectations are as a department. We've presented before a lot about our hazard control plan, so kind of making sure that they understand how we're going to keep our operations safe. And then we would bring the operators and everyone on board about 3 to 6 months. Let's see. So here's kind of our timeline. Now I'd probably look at the colored kind of Gantt chart that we have there. That is a little bit easier to kind of look at as far as when that's going to happen logistically throughout the time. So we submitted our permit application 2 weeks ago, right? So we have not received word from TDEC yet that it's been accepted, but we anticipate that anytime soon. We submitted it a bit ago. TDEC they wanted some additional water quality monitoring done. So we performed that over last year's dry season. So we had that ready for submittal this time. So we should be in agreement with everything. They have a timeline of 365 days to issue a permit. So we've anticipated that, but that has the design starting before that. So during that time, we anticipate potentially bringing a CMAR, so the general contractor on board, either later this fall or very early next year, as we start kind of that process of really, as we get into design. One of the benefits of having a CMAR is bringing them on board early so we can start that process of understanding constructability needs. We've got the staffing on there. So we have an initial startup of mid-2032, but TDEC has kind of expressed some kind of draft guidance that they would like us to operate for a year to understand kind of our hazard control plan before we actually start sending water to the reservoir. So we have, our general timeline is showing that as, so for that year, we would be sending to the river, so from 2032 to 2033, and then at 2033, we would be actually sending water to the reservoir for treatment. Let's see, that's all I've got for this one. Is there any questions?
Vice Mayor.
Thank you for this. Very informative and good for the public to see that we're proactively
Moving.
working on sewer and infrastructure issues, even though it doesn't make the news. Or maybe it will tonight because of this wonderful presentation. But one item was that in the past presentations, we've seen that it would be either the water after the whole process, it could either go into the river or directed to the reservoir. It seems like we're kind of focused on the reservoir, which is good. I think that's a good thing. Is there was some talk about, putting it back into the river and increasing the flow.
And then taking it out.
And then
Yeah.
taking it out. Kind of just touch on that possibly.
Yeah, so the amount that we can send to the reservoir is limited by the size of the water plant. So while it would be great to send all 6 MGD to the reservoir, we can't, our water plant is not rated for that capacity. So the water plant is rated for 2, so that's as much as we could send there, and then the rest would be going to the river.
Got it.
Now, 6 is obviously that's not the flow we're gonna start up with.
Sure.
So those would probably be, proportional out. But we would still be sending highly treated flow to the river, which would be helping to augment, during those low flow summer months.
With that, we're purchasing water from Harpeth Valley at a pretty steady rate, I would think. Is that
Yes.
any financial projections on? I guess we don't know till we know, but I would think it's a lot of money we're spending purchasing water. Would this help in the utility in any capacity of that expense?
Yeah, it would help to offset some of that. So we wouldn't solely be reliable on this.
No.
We would need, there would lots of other upgrades
Yeah.
that would need to happen, but this would certainly help offset some of that minimum bill that we are
Eventually.
required to
Yeah.
get. Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have those financial projections yet because
No,
we're
that's
still
fine.
working on, that's really based off of how much water we start up with, right? Which is still kind of in that phase.
As long as the long term, that's because
Oh, definitely part
that's
of the
going to
plan.
definitely
Yeah.
help offset costs to ratepayers.
Definitely, yep.
Alderman Potts.
Thanks, sir. Great presentation. Very excited. Yeah, we will be best friends as we're going through this, and keeping all of those neighbors well informed as we go through this until 2034. Question that I had was back on slide 4, and it kind of brought up kind of a part A and a part B, but you were talking about. This was on, maybe it's not.
Is that, I don't know
think
which
it's the
slide
slide
that is.
before this one.
The slide, okay, I don't have them numbered.
And you were just talking about boring. And the first part that I had is, are we currently going to bore so that we can expand with the future in mind regarding the growth of the plant? Or do we wait to bore until that need is there?
No, so there is, in the park construction now, there is a bore that is planned.
Okay.
So once that bore is complete, right, and we're able to accept it, then that's when that will happen. So it'll be so the bore is a large steel pipe, right, and it'll be one of the lines within that bore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it serve both that phase and future phases?
Right,
As
that's
we
what-
Yes.
expand? So
Yes.
that would be sufficient to help us over the long haul for not just this phase?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
that's where I'm going with that.
Is that-
Thank you,
yes.
Eric. And that actually kind of takes me to the next piece, and this is more of an engineering question, maybe for Eric, is knowing that we've got the boring piece of it, is did we sit down with staff to talk about if we're having to go underneath the interstate right now, and if it's already there, did we already plan for any other utilization of that bored area?
It's for this specific purpose.
It's only for this one.
Yeah, so I do believe there's also like fiber that's intended on going through that conduit, going through that bore as well.
Okay.
I think the reclaim line is intending on going through there too. So there's a couple other utilities that we're intending.
Okay, yep. And then the part B of this is really thinking much further down the road, but with the boring that's taking place in Nashville, talking about the loop that'll go from downtown Nashville to the airport, has there any considerations regarding this bored line that we're using for our water treatment plant or for the plant itself, regarding any future boring that might be going down the interstate or involving that, Elon Musk's group? I don't know what the name of it is right now.
Boring. It's my understanding that they're boring well below where the utilities are, everything that I've heard.
Just want to keep that on our radar.
I mean, you're saying if
keep an
someone
eye on.
else were to come in after
Yes.
us and want to bore,
Yeah.
they'd
And-
have to go around us.
Or under us.
Under us, yeah.
Under.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last question that I've got, since you brought the timeline up, and this was on your Gantt chart there at the end, So I've received feedback from different neighbors, or neighborhoods, I should say, in HOAs that are on that east side of 65 and in that Berry Farms area. When we're looking at irrigation and potable water and the pressure that they're actually experiencing right now. And so I wanted to see if you could maybe speak to that, speak to high level what the plan is, because as we go through these phases, we will experience more droughts, I'm sure, and I want to know, or I want them to know as well what our high level plan is, and then when it happens, we'll be able to provide them with a deeper dive into it.
Yeah, so the way that, obviously the design, we've not finalized the design. The way that the reclaim is pulled off at our current plant is that the reclaim is pulled off before anything goes to the river. I anticipate that being the same thing now. There are times in our plan on Claude Yates where we have nothing going to the river because it is, during the summer, it is all being pulled off for reclaim, right? So that could essentially be the same thing here, it's typically like the 6 to 9-ish in the time in the morning when everyone's filling their ponds and irrigating their golf courses and stuff. So it would, having the plan right there would boost the pressure, right? Boost it even more, but it would also provide a capacity, more capacity for them to use.
Yep.
Right. So this plant could definitely benefit that once we get to that point.
Yeah, and I recognize that. What I'm getting to is before that happens, I want to make sure that there's a plan, as you just made reference, between 6 to 9, that maybe there's a recommended schedule for the east side of Franklin to do their irrigation or to have those water usages. They have one time frame, and we'll say the west side is also using it at a different time.
So we looked at that. We looked at that back before we had built the reclaim pump station. I think what some of the problem is, and I can certainly go back and investigate this with my team right now, is that we are bypassing the reclaim because the reclaim goes in that Hobos. The Hobos break right now is that same reclaim line. So what we essentially have is we are adding some head losses as we bypass that pipe. So we have a pipe on the ground that's connected from one end to the other so we can continually provide reclaimed water, right? There's a little bit of additional head loss that happens through that pipe. It's a little bit of a larger pipe, and it's working off of pressure from the system. So we've re-energized that kind of at the request of Berry Farms. I can go back and definitely look and make sure that that's the same pressures that we were providing before. But I have a feeling that's probably contributing to those losses.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Alderman Brown.
Yeah, enjoy your time with Michelle. I always have, so I'm happy to share. Quick question. I saw a note in there that in about 9 years we would deplete this capacity. So in this timeline, about when would that trigger a conversation for us? I think one of the things we've learned is we just waited too long on some of these conversations. We were smart to get some land and we were smart to forward think here, but rates and everything else, we just waited a little bit too long on some things. So in the capacity, if we're 9 years out from exhausting the capacity that all this is going to add, at what point in this Gantt chart is there a trigger to thinking about expanding in the next phase? Again, because that would fall somewhere in the back end of this development here.
So I'll start and you can chime in here too. The general planning context, looking at development patterns and what our experience has been, is this new plant in 6 MGD would get us around 15 years of capacity from when we open. The 9-year, I think, is between when we did this planning and we had you act on the resolution. But we've got 15 years or so from when we fully go operational on this plant in terms of projected capacity and the development patterns we've seen over the last 3 decades probably would be fair. So that's how we extrapolated that out and looked at. So when you look at these 3 phases of each 6 MGD each, you've got about 45 to 50 years of capacity available at this site with 3 different phases.
Right. So part of that planning process initially was, if we went with an 8 MGD plant, right, that would be great, and that would give us more capacity, but it's also more expensive right now, right? So the debt service would be a bit larger, and it was kind of I think it was kind of like a give and play a little bit with what would be, a 2 MGD plant would be much cheaper, but not but we'd be
But not very
building
efficient.
one and then we'd go in the next one, right? So that would not be any fun for anyone either.
I think one of the things we looked at too is the bottom line total capacity, because if you did 8, you'd be doing 8 and 8 and you'd pretty much be done. We looked at this doing 3 6s, got us a little more capacity over the long haul and a little bit more flexibility about when to do phases, because it's great to say, but we may not always grow the same pace we've been growing at for the last 30 years. That world may change, so we have the ability to adapt with 3 smaller slightly smaller phases that also max out the capacity that we can get at this site. That was the thinking when we went through this and thought about the various options.
Okay.
Does that, okay.
Yep.
Alderman Barnhill, then I'll get Alderman Berger.
Yes, you mentioned that you were gonna, let's see, treat 6 million gallons. 2 million of it would go back into the water treatment plant reservoir now. And you also said that that might help somewhere along the way in reducing some of the usage on the Harpeth Valley Utility District water that they furnish. How would that do that?
So it would, because the water that we purchase is just for our water district, right, which is just
Right.
one of the 4, it would help to lower that demand. So the demand that we have to purchase, because we would have a consistent supply of water. So right now, we only purchase water from Harpeth Valley when we can't pull from the river, which, happens late August, September, October. It's kind of now into November still. So instead of having to purchase 10 million gallons from Harpeth Valley during that time, we would only potentially need to purchase 8.
So you would plan on running the water treatment plant then at its capacity of 2 million gallons per day?
Well,
Yes.
capacity is actually higher than that.
Yeah.
There's 3 treatment trains that would take us up to about 3.9. Is that right? 3.9?
Close to 3.
Okay.
So right now we don't run it that high because we're limited
Right.
by the amount of water we can pull from the river. So we've never run it that high because we've not had a need to, right? But our plant is rated to go that high.
So what if you pump more than 2 million gallons from the treated water into the reservoir? What can you run through or go through at the water treatment plant? How much per day can you treat? 3 million gallons?
I think each
then-
train is
and then-
1.3
and
million gallons
Yeah.
a day.
And
So
then the other question is not necessarily how much water is used in the city of Franklin, but how much is used with the residents who are on the Franklin water system. How much? What do we? How many millions of gallons per day? I'm not interested in HB&TS, and I'm not
Sure.
particularly Mill Crofton, Mallory Valley, any of those. They pull off. What do we need per day to furnish water to our residents?
So the amount of water that we furnish, so what we purchase versus what we make can sometimes vary, but our daily demand can sometimes vary between 6 and 10. Right, it can go 10 during those dry months
Right.
when we don't have enough, right? So if we could during the wet months, right, when our demand is lower, we can furnish a good portion of our water. Not all of it, but we can furnish it because we can pull enough from the river. During those dry months, we can't pull anything from the river, so we end up purchasing a lot more from Harpeth Valley than we typically do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
So the other question, not necessarily related. Last year, we had conserved water. The year before that, we had conserved water. The year before that, I don't remember whether we did or did not. But we should have been able to, if we're doing what we're saying we're doing, we should be able then to eliminate those peaks and valleys of conserved water and don't use it this way, don't use it that way. Is that a fair statement?
So it's a
let's say it could help.
it's a fair statement
I would
to say
be
that it could.
careful to say that it prevents it in
Entirely.
any situation
Yeah.
I would be
because
careful also.
yeah, so it would certainly help because there are times we cannot treat. We can't withdraw, and we've gotten to a point where we're unable to use our treatment capacity, and we're wholly reliant on Harpeth Valley water.
Correct.
So this would lessen those times and create a longer runway for us to produce water and buy less from HVUD.
Perfect, yes, agreed. So I mean, I'm hoping it would reduce those times because, as Eric was saying, we don't have a consistent water supply, right? So this would help us with that.
Provides
there's
a
also-
more consistent water
A
supply.
more consistent, yeah. There's also some unintended benefits of this water is going to be a lot cleaner than water we
yeah.
pull from the river.
Yeah, what, absolutely.
So,
That's the purpose of this, is this water will be cleaner than the water that we're pumping out of the river right now.
right. Yes,
Because upstream, there could be a dairy farm. Somewhere
somewhere, yeah,
upstream, in College Grove.
probably in College Grove.
You finished there?
I'm finished.
Yeah. Thanks for enlightening us on the dairy farm.
It's there.
Alderman Berger?
Yeah, I think I've got most of my questions answered, but, so the site that we would build down there would be to, 15 years, 2049. So will we take a look at possibly, looking forward to what happens after 2049 when we're forward thinking? Because, we've sort of drug our feet a bit on where we should be right now. But, we've done good planning, but still, we really did leave this go for a while. So I think because that can't be expanded then anymore. That's limited.
The plant we're talking about now?
18.
No, we're as Eric was mentioned, we're looking at three phases. So a 6, a 12, and an 18.
Update.
Yeah. So if we go beyond 18, is that what you're?
Yeah.
I am not going to be here.
You are?
You're literally talking 60 plus
Yeah, I mean, it's-
years,
I
60
think
to
we-
70
No,
years. from now.
after 49, I'm talking.
Oh,
That's
okay.
just the first phase.
That's just the
First
first
phase.
bit. Yeah.
first.
That's phase 1 of 3.
That's where that gets us.
Yes.
So
I misunderstood that.
yeah. So if we're, I mean,
I'm glad I asked.
my chart didn't go to 2049 because then the graph
I
gets so
thought
small
I
and
heard
it's
you
hard
say
to
that,
look.
and I thought, no, that's not what you said. Okay.
But if you think, I mean, so 2049, right? Probably eight-ish years before that, we would need to start planning for the plant. So we would need to start the design process. We would need to
For the
start.
expansion. yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Got
So
it. Got it. I thought I heard that. And I thought,
yeah. So it's not 2049 and then start planning. It's
no.
backing up from that. And then the next phase
And then
being
next phase.
online
Okay,
at
good.
2049.
Perfect.
If we're still going the path that we are.
Sure. Yeah, that
Okay.
makes sense. Thank you.
Alderman Caesar, and then I'll get Alderman Peterson. In fact, I'm gonna ask to let Alderman Peterson go. She always fusses at me if I use last.
She moved closer to you for a reason, I think.
Yeah, there
And
she's
you are a
closer.
rookie there.
I'm
so
happy to let.
barely a rookie now.
Absolutely.
No, I was just thinking, what percentage of the population of the city of Franklin has City of Franklin water?
So is that 30%?
I was going to
It's around 30%. It's around 30%.
Ish.
I'm not sure of the exact percentage. Yeah,
Okay, just one.
the city water. Yes,
Yeah.
30% of our population.
yes.
My calculations say 20, but I may be wrong. I'm not a math major like Alderman Peterson.
30s, right?
Alderman Caesar?
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Barnhill got really close to the question I was asking, and I thought he was going to hit it, but maybe just one more question about the 6 million gallons that we can process a day, the 2 million that our current water plant can facilitate kind of processing and turn around, and then you've got this $4 million gallon amount that has to go back into the river. When we started looking at this, did we consider opportunities to look at an additional reservoir or other areas where we could store some of this water to enhance our overall capacity? And maybe you did. I wasn't privy to those discussions.
To enhance the water that we treat again to distribute.
Well, I suppose if the treatment plant can produce $6 million or 6 million gallons of treatable water today, in the future, you can only process 2 to get it water potable, right? The other 4 has to go back to the river,
Correct.
right? Is there a way because we only have 2 million gallon reservoir, right? So you can only send 2 million into the reservoir,
Well, the
or am I
reservoir-
not?
So it's a 115 million gallon reservoir.
Well, there we go. That's the math I was looking for. So
Okay.
if we have a $115 million reservoir, or 115 million gallon reservoir, you can tell I talk about money a lot. Is there a way that we can do something else with that 4 million gallons rather than put it back into the river without disrupting what our environmental concerns regulate, our environmental agencies regulate?
I mean, what we're not considering now is, I mean, if the board wanted us to improve, to increase capacity at the water plant, that would also be an option too. That's not part of this.
Yeah.
There's some cost limiting factors to that. So
Yeah, that's
Right now, the limiting
that's
component
really your
is
governor. There's
that
if
$2
you
million
wanna-
2 million gallons.
it's really
per
the
day.
capacity, treatment capacity at your drinking water plant.
Yeah.
And how that relates.
So it's
to
not
the-
about a reservoir to hold
Yeah.
it. It's, yeah, okay.
And so what we did when we did that plant upgrade, we did look at capacity. It is three treatment trains at that plant of 1.3 million gallons each. We typically operate 2 at a time and cycle through the 3. But we have the ability to run all 3 if we wanted to. So you have up to about 3.9 million gallons of capacity. So you could do it that way. We did have some broad discussions years ago when we were doing some of the integrated planning that it just didn't seem cost effective to add more treatment capacity there. You certainly could revisit that, but that has ramifications across the whole system. You'd really have to dig in on that, but given the size of what we produce and the capacity at the time, that was what made sense. This does change that math a little bit. It largely allows us to keep the system going and that reservoir at a higher level more consistently, which will help with what Michelle was describing earlier.
I suppose that's the root of the question,
Yeah.
right? Rather than just wasting the water into the river, if we could retain it, because the reservoir is the 170 million gallons, so that it gives us 3 weeks or whatever. We have some runway with water, and if there's an opportunity for us to preserve some of that water rather than putting it back into the river, even that would be something I'd want us to think about.
There are some benefits to putting it in the river as well, correct? In terms of
yeah,
flow
so
and-
yeah, there's a lot
So
of
it's not a total waste
Yeah,
in that way.
that's
There
fair.
is some benefit in terms of flow.
right. Yeah, so we. I also didn't fail to mention is that we're not going to give up our ARAP. So our ARAP allows us to withdraw water from the
We'll still be withdrawing.
from the river. Yeah, so we would still have that in the case of, when I talk about a hazard control plan, right? That's ensuring that the water that we send to the reservoir is safe, right? Is of our standards. And if that were to not be the case, then we would pull water from the Harpeth if we needed to. So that would be our plan B essentially. But I mean, it's not something we haven't thought about. It's just
Sure.
expanding the water plant was not in the cards right now. The other thing to mention too is that we plan to divert the 2 MGD to solely go through advanced treatment. So the entire 6 MGD will not be going through advanced treatment. There will only be the 2 that will be going, that's intended to go to the reservoir. If we were to put the entire 6 MGD through the advanced treatment, it is costly.
That's another critical
Right.
point. I assume they
Yes.
both came out at the same level, and one takes a right and
we
the other
looked at
takes a
that,
left.
and it was. I mean, it's costly, and then really there is no regulatory requirements for us to be advanced to treating to purified standards to send water to the river right now. There may be someday, and that can be something someone else we may think about in the future, but at this point in time, there's not.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
But it's being built. I think what for us the decision point here, or thing we want to make, is that in the future, if we have water issues, we could expand. We have 6 at our water treatment. We have 6 million gallons a day that we could, shift over if we can't. So is that fair to say that like we're building this so that? I guess I don't understand how when you say we're redirecting flows, like in the future, is it a big deal to redirect all 6 million through the advanced treatment and then go? I mean, is that a big retrofit?
I mean, with pumps you can do anything, right? I
but
mean,
is it a
we
big
could.
retrofit to make
To the water
all-
plant?
Yeah, to make
it
all
will be
6?
large. So I mean, so there's some large concrete issues, some hydraulic restrictions at the
So
water
as it's
plant.
designed, is that part of like the expansion. I think we see water issues all over the country where in Harpeth Valley is great until it's not, and something happens. So I don't know. It's probably a design. Y'all can think through that, and you probably will. But I would think we'd want the possibility at some point in the future, if we needed to retrofit this so 6 million was advanced treated and did need to go to the reservoir, that we would not have to redesign the whole plant or have some big major. You see what I'm saying?
So it's I will say the older part of the water plant right now is the hydraulic restrictions, right? Those basins were not built, you've all been at the water plant, those basins were not built to treat 6 MGD of water. So we would need to expand those, we would need to do, some of that piping. It would be a large, it would be an effort.
I'm talking about the new plant.
Oh, the new plant.
I'm talking about designing the new plant where 4 million is not going through advanced treatment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It'll be in a I say modular in a sense of it can be
Got it.
expanded if we need to.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, that's good. Thank you.
I had a question about the water reclamation facility biosolids. Would need to have some modifications. Have we
Yes.
got enough capacity there?
No, there is enough capacity. So the existing solids structure was built or all of the existing solids facility at the North Plant, we're calling it the North Plant, was built to accommodate 2 plants. But we don't have a way to get solids from the outside of that facility into that facility. And so that's what we talk about. So whether it be through a conveyor, like we've talked about having dump trucks go from the South Plant to the North Plant at night, right? So they're not dealing with traffic, they're not dealing with odor concerns, and then how would they physically get from the outside of the plant to inside the plant? That's what the upgrades we're talking about would need to happen.
Gotcha.
So conveyor belt, dump truck, whatever it would be.
And my last comment would be a little deja vu of whenever we upgraded the water treatment plant. That was a long, arduous process. It'd be worth going back to watch it if it's on tape.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of struggles with that. And so I'm glad we did, because we have 2 sources, which to your point is really good. Most communities don't have to. So.
I mean, right now with having Harpeth Valley and the river, we've got 2 sources, which is not what most communities do. So we're in a really good spot. I mean, that was seen in 2010, right? We were able to continue producing water when Harpeth Valley wasn't.
Ready to keep rolling?
Please.
Because I think you're up next again.
I am.
Resolution
You're gonna
2026.
Hear me more.
A resolution authorizing providing for the financing and engineering design of a clean water facility project, including authorizing the execution of application, contractual agreements, and other necessary documents, and making certain representatives, blah, 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 for amount of $17,609,000 and acceptance of $5,800,000 of principal forgiveness. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the SRF loan. Actually, Dylan prepared this, and he is much better. This is for the pre-design of the new clean water facility, right?
Let me interrupt you a second. I've been pointed out, I need to comment that there will be a public hearing on April 28th regarding this. So now, go ahead.
Okay. So in 2024, we submitted an an application to get on SRF's priority ranking list for the design of this facility, right? We received word of that. We also received word that we received grant monies for emerging contaminants, for removal of emerging contaminants. We didn't know how much it was at the time. We've since learned that that's the 5.8 million of principal forgiveness. So SRF ranked us on the priority ranking list. They are just now getting around to giving us the loan. So we have to have a public hearing in order to take on that debt contract, or to take on that contract to authorize that money. This 17.6 million was included in the most recent cost of service study because we knew that this would be coming at some point in time. So we've got in here the emerging contaminants. It'll be as principal forgiveness, which is essentially just like a grant. So it reduces that amount to 11.6. Is that what it is? And then we'll go to this next one. So on the 28th, we'll have the public hearing and you will be authorizing a resolution with these loan terms in it. So an interest rate of 2.35%. So design loans have a repayment period of 5 years. So not the typical 30 years that we see for construction that we have. Principal forgiveness of the 5.8 million. The security is the full faith and credit of the city of Franklin. Disbursement method is, so we pay upfront and then we get reimbursed by TDEC afterwards. And then we all talked about the debt coverage was included in the 2025 impact cost of service study that was done by Hazen with Fernando came and presented all those times. So April 28th, we recommend that you acknowledge Resolution 2026-29 authorizing the loan to proceed. The public meeting will be held at the voting meeting. The consideration of the authorizing resolution. And then the deadline to return all the documents is shortly after that on May 12th. So this is everything that's in the resolution. I've already said this multiple times. Dylan is very thorough. We need to let you all know about this. Does anyone have any questions?
I want to clarify, the term acknowledgement is used here, but you would pass a resolution.
Oh, you have to vote on it, yes, I'm sorry.
You're not acknowledging,
I think
you are
today
taking
you're
action.
acknowledging that
Yeah,
it's coming.
yes.
I'm sorry, I misspoke about that.
5.8 million forgiveness and 2.3 sounds really good. Ready to go on to full, any questions on that? Are you ready to go to number 4, which is 4th of July fireworks display at the park at Harlansdale?
So I wanted to bring this forward for some direction from the board. We have our traditional fireworks display at the park at Harlansdale Farm. That cost of that display has risen over the years to where it is at $50,000 to do the 20-minute display that we do. That is right at my administrative authority. There had been some desire to enhance our 250th celebration, and so we did ask the fireworks folks to consider what that would look like, what that would cost us, and the proposal that we received back is an additional $20,000 would get us 10 more minutes of display and larger shells throughout the display. So you'd go from 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and you would have larger shells just sort of dispersed throughout that 30-minute show. So that is above my administrative authority. Wanted to get board direction if you're comfortable where we are today with the 20-minute show, or you want to enhance it to the larger show that would take me a little bit past my authority, and we would work through getting that approval. That's really the straightforward ask. We are doing a number of things, but just as a quick side note, to enhance what we're doing in community events around the 250th. So we have had a mural that's out with the working with Franklin tomorrow. That'll be at the Arbor Day celebration this weekend. So that'll be available for folks to participate. There are mosaic tiles that people can paint that would be part of that mosaic. We're adding some different things to various events throughout. Touch a Truck, I think, could have some exciting elements too that are enhanced this year, as we're just trying to make our country's 250th birthday a little more special with some of our community events. And this is one of those examples. We'll have shortly launched a community-wide calendar with the Convention and Visitors Bureau that has not only city events, but some other community events that are enhanced and centered around the celebration of our country's birthday. So this specific question, though, is, does the board want us to enhance this? We can make that part of our additional capacity in the budget to accommodate it if the board so chooses, and just looking for that direction from you tonight.
Yes.
Question. Is all of that, all those funds, both of those funds, 50 and the 20, come strictly from the city, or do we have any partnerships with that?
The fireworks display is a city-funded
Yeah.
event.
Have we ever asked about?
We are exploring some other sponsorship opportunities, but we don't have that at this point. We've got to
But we
commit.
could.
We've got to commit to this.
Sure.
now.
I would say let's.
But there are some other events we are looking at some sponsorships,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I'd say let's go ahead and commit, and not opposed to you putting out the ask to some corporate partners and saying they would like to sponsor with that. I think we should ask, doesn't hurt to ask. And I know you're looking at other sponsorships
Yeah.
for other things.
Exactly. So,
But-
but we're having
but-
those discussions.
I think it would also be prudent for us to also put that out there, so if somebody wanted to partner and put in 10,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, who knows? So I think we should make sure we're asking for that.
We will put that on the table with
Yep.
some of these
Yeah.
opportunities too.
We just need to let them know.
Okay, item 5 is Resolution 2026-18, rescinding resolution rescinding Resolution 2022-84, resolution granting authority to the city administrator and adopting a new resolution granting new authorities to
Or
the
if they
city
do this one, I
administrator.
can just do it.
Is it over 75?
It's 70. So this is, actually, if we do this, I could do number 4, actually, within this. But there are 2 specific elements that we are asking for your consideration on related to previously granted authority to the city administrator. We update this from time to time, and there are 2 specific elements we wanted to add to this consideration. One is to clarify the authority for city administrator to exercise the acquisition of property related to right-of-way and easements on projects. There's some specific language, Shauna can describe, that we wanted to clarify that. You have a general authority that's been granted currently up to $50,000, and we wanted a clarification that that could also be applied to the acquisition of right-of-way and easements for capital projects. So this is a further clarification for that component. And then the second point that we asked for your consideration is if you would consider increasing that authority from the $50,000 that it's at today up to $75,000. So those are 2 specific elements. Everything else would remain the same. You provide authority for us to enter into those contracts on your behalf. As you see on this 7 o'clock meeting, I report all those actions that I take on your behalf to you, and we would continue that practice. But we use it for grant applications. We use it for entering into various contracts so that we can keep things moving on lower dollar amounts. One of the things I always emphasize to you, because I have the authority doesn't mean I always use it. There are times I bring things to you that are well within the granted authority because I know you may want to weigh in on it or we may want your feedback on it before we do it. So just because you've granted it does not mean I always use it or we always use it. There are times we bring it to you because we know it's something you may want to be involved in or we want your guidance on. So this would be 2 very specific changes. I would absolutely say we need to do the right-of-way and easement piece. That helps us streamline some things, and wanted to put on the table the option to increase the dollar amount at the same time if you so choose. So that's it, pretty straightforward. Glad to answer any questions. Sean has looked at this as well, so any questions we can
I'm
glad to
getting
answer.
some nods on this side, and I see a question from Alderman Potts.
All right, thank you, sir. Eric, just for everybody's public awareness, I believe within the past 4 years, give or take, that we actually voted to make that last increase. Is that accurate? And we moved it from what to what?
I think 2022 was the last update of this, and I know we had moved from 25,000 to 50,000. I believe it was in 2022, but there are times we have updated and restated this. So it was at a minimum that far back. And I think the amount before that had been 25,000. So one of the things we look at is what comes through and, how many items. We're trying to make sure we streamline your process, but also want the accountability. That's why we report it. And again, we bring things to you that we know may be of interest, even when it's within authority too.
All right, thank you, sir.
Vice Mayor?
I think inherently this warrants, some discussion.
Sure.
Not because we don't trust you, but just simply because you may not always be the city administrator,
Sure.
or this is just prudent.
No,
And I'd like to know what, what the threshold or how many that we saw over the 50 that would have been within the 50 to 75 to get an idea of is this what has caused the problem that is, and not saying that there was a problem, But like, what would have been avoided?
So how many items are we talking about?
You know,
in a
like
period
over
of
the
time?
last year, like just
Okay.
kind of curious. Again, we raised it by 25,000. It was 25 to 50.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be willing to even go higher on some specifically for just the easement purchases. So, if we would delineate between specifically for those, because I know those can be numerous and a lot of them possibly under 100,000, let's say, for the easements for capital projects, if that would make things easier. I think that kind of thing. The other thing I have no reason to be concerned, other than, but we want to make sure that things are progressed. But like, how many $49,000 contracts have we had, or for and I know that there's some reasonable reasons why you probably target for under 50, so it can be a streamlined process, but. Multiple, invoices or different contracts that you all have to keep something under 50. If this would alleviate some of even that kind of behind the scenes stuff that, is probably reasonable. But I guess just more justification at the end of the day is what establishing the issue. I have no problem with it. But I think maybe just a little more than just like, kind of, I guess why 75? Why not 100?
Yeah,
Why
it was the next logical increment.
Sure.
And
I get
we're
that.
glad to provide more background for that for you as well. On easements, one of the things that might help with that too is, it's only on your approved projects. We're not doing
Right,
anything
exactly.
outside of
So why
what's
not-
already been approved.
Do
So that may be something.
And it's not even negotiate them.
Yeah.
It's not like we negotiate them, so I don't even know. I mean,
And when we bring projects before you, a lot of times you'll see that language that already has given
Gives
Eric the
authorization,
authority
yeah.
to do it, and me the authorization to condemn if needed, and that doesn't put a number on it. What we've said in those is if it's a project and an easement or right of way is needed, Eric already has the authority, and those can be massively big.
Okay.
This is the one-offs where it might not be necessarily like on your radar. And for example, the one that kind of brought this to our attention this time was in Hard Bargain, right? That they're asking for a transit stop. But in order to do that, we have to take a little bit of property. But you guys own all the property, and only really you can decide what happens to it unless you give the city administrator authority. And that one isn't part of like an actual major
Right.
CIP project. So it just makes sense that we could just do it.
Yeah, that's a good point. The big projects, you sort of provide that authority
On the
as
front
we're doing it on the front end. And there was a kind of a technicality, regardless of dollar amount, that we need to clean up on those that give us some flexibility. So we could just do that piece and give you a little more detail on the dollar amounts. We'd have to look at giving you the specifics that you're looking for. I don't know that off the top of my head. One thing to just make sure you know too, this is a cumulative amount. So we
Okay.
don't do a series of contracts that are under 50
Gotcha.
and chain them together. They're cumulative. So once we hit that 50,000, we come to you.
All right.
Even
That's
though
good.
I might have done a previous authorization, we don't layer another one on that goes under that dollar amount. It is cumulative.
That's good to know. Thank you.
That's an important accountability
Very
too.
important now. Thank you.
Alderman Berger.
I'm with Patrick on that. Why don't we look at maybe, can you put the stipulation in there if it's easements? Then we give you up to the authority of 100,000 for easements. And just add that layer in there. So that, and then if you want to stay at 75, and we think 75 is reasonable, maybe some of us think that $100,000 is reasonable. I don't know. Let's see what the other board members think, but I think we ought to put something in there to at least give you 100,000 on the easements. Because you say, these are projects we've already approved, and, we need to move forward. We don't need to be waiting a week or 2 or 3 or 4 to come back to the board.
And as Shauna pointed out, bigger projects, you've already
Yeah.
pretty much granted that.
That's
So
right.
that's not
the
an
way it
issue
is.
there. It's these other kind of
So I'd be comfortable
One-offs.
with that.
Everybody good?
Yep.
We'll provide some additional follow-up. Thanks.
We'll go to item 6, which is ordinance 2025-54, an ordinance to rezone 202.60 acres to revise the Hillside Hillcrest Overlay District boundaries for the property located south of MacHatcher Memorial Parkway, east of Franklin Road at 354 Franklin Road, establishing a public hearing on May the 12th. I do have a public speaker. Go ahead, Joey, and then we'll ask Drake Reeder if he wants to say anything after that.
All right, thank you. This is a rezoning request specific to the Hillcrest Hillside Overlay District for the property that you see on the screen there. It's a very large parcel that touches both Franklin Road and MacHatcher Parkway. So this is to match the conservation line that was amended back this past September. The conservation line is associated with the conservation design concept and Envision Franklin. So it's really more of a recommendation tool, but the actual HHO line is what protects the property. So the applicant is requesting to revise the HHO line to match the conservation line as you see on the screen there. It's the darker green on the screen on the map there that follows along. And that does give more buffer and protection to the residential lots on Ash Drive. There is no change to the base zoning district at this time. There is no development associated with this request. This is purely changing or altering the Hillside Hillcrest overlay to match the conservation line. So staff recommends approval, as did Planning Commission.
Hello, Mayor, Board. Thank you for your time. My name is Drake Reeder. I'm a landscape architect and land planner at Gamble Design Collaborative, here on behalf of Cumberland and Western Resources, who's the owner of the property. Joey spoke to most of the things, but there was a couple of things I wanted to clarify and just talk through the process. A lot of y'all are aware of this ongoing process. The Envision Franklin amendment kept the rural reserve, changed the conservation. That line was a collaborative effort with staff, multiple on-site meetings with current planning, the long-range planning, historic. So it has been a long process, but one where we were dodging ticks and driving across the site to try to figure out where this line makes sense and better conforms to the zoning ordinance. We see this as a way to refine the line to better align with the zoning ordinance and based on that September 2025 Envision Franklin update as well. So happy to answer any questions you may have on that.
Seeing none, we'll keep moving. Well, I'm sorry, Alderman Potts.
I did have a question, and this was specific to, and I have this map pulled up on my computer, but it was actually a different map that I had more concern with. And it was specific to where the MacHatcher and I believe it's at Moore's Lane, no, Cool Springs Boulevard dead end right there. And the concern that I have is, and I think it's labeled as update 2, and I'm sorry I'm speaking to this, but the change in allowing or making this modification, the concern that I have is by making this modification, it would allow for some type of structure or building or commercial business to be built right there at the base of this hillside overlay as it dead ends from Cool Springs Boulevard into MacHatcher, and it would be really tight in that area. And I just want to ask, as you represent the developer for the proposed development, is that the plan, or is there any discussion for that right now?
Well, I just want to clarify, it will remain a state residential. That is the zoning. We're not asking for that. So the zoning is a state residential. The Envision Franklin did not change as rural reserve. My apologies. Both of those do not allow commercial. So as of now, our plan is to work through the HHO. We don't have a plan in mind. We want to make sure we know what we're drawing to. And that's been our concern the whole time is we want to make sure that the HHO makes sense based on Envision Franklin. We know our boundaries and then bring before you a plan. But there's no intention right now. There's no intention for commercial. It is staying state residential and then rural reserve at this time. So any other changes would have to come before this board, and even more so Envision Franklin before Planning Commission, before that could be changed in any way. That line specifically follows the steep slopes as you come into there. So we walked out with staff, and as we drove through there, you really notice how those 14% or greater slopes tend to pick up. So that line was based on the existing tree canopy, kind of where it's hidden from Mac Hatcher, and then where the 14% slopes start as you go up the hill.
I've been on the site as well, so.
And that max is a 2.5 stories for rural reserve and for estate residential for the existing policies that are on site. And those are residential policies.
Thank you.
Alderman Peterson.
I was just going to say, maybe we could also see, right after the map, the next thing there shows rezoning lines. Yeah. So,
And Alderman Peterson, that was the map I was actually trying to make reference to as well.
oh, okay.
Are you through there, Alderman Peterson? You have
Yeah,
another
yes, I
question?
just wanted to
Okay.
pull that up.
Vice Mayor, then I'll get Alderman Brown.
So, when did we see this last? Did we joint conceptual? Do you recall joint conceptual? It would have only been a joint conceptual,
I think so.
and we'll have to look at attendance for that meeting in Oklahoma. But I would say that we probably didn't have a lot of because of the nature of those meetings. It's just a lot of discussion that happens between Planning Commission. Envision Franklin is a Planning Commission document, and so they have changed this. And zoning ordinance is a board mayor and alderman document, and they work collaboratively together. I'd say. I think my only concern that I have no problem with that line. I think what I'm continually. I think we've seen this piece of property come the last 3 or 4 years with various ideas and have heard on the background different ideas, and it just is beginning to feel like something's going on with this, and we don't know what we're asking to be change this, which is an odd request, by the way, by itself. I mean, just to be honest, it's abnormal. Usually this would happen with the master zoning ordinance update. I'm not sure why that wasn't done before in this January 1st update, probably because Envision Franklin wasn't updated by then. So I guess it leaves me with more questions. Again, I have no problem with this, but the only thing is it changes it to base zoning. So, we change this and then, by right zoning, things can happen, and that's fine. But we didn't get a vote on that Envision Franklin change, nor did we discuss it together, other than that joint conceptual. And there's just a lot that's happening. There's a lot of potential with this property, positive for the community, and we just continue to get kind of like little pieces of changes. And I think maybe the point of this is I'm more curious about what the intent of the property owner is for this. I think there's a lot of great intent, and I think you've got a board that's willing to work with the property owner on whatever the intent is. But we're kind of getting piecemealed, and I don't know. At some point, that causes more questions. Like, are we doing something that we might not want to happen? If in the future we don't know what's happening. It continues to be there's no real plan for this. Yet we have gone through an Envision Franklin change. We've gone through a zoning ordinance request. So there's clearly something, and that's okay. I want the property owner to work with the city on something. That is like tangible. Village Green was out there at one point. I was not opposed to that. But there's, so anyway, those are my comments. I have no problem with this, but
Can I clarify
Yeah.
on that? Is that okay to respond
Sure,
to that?
go ahead.
We did bring forth a plan last time. I think a lot of what happened is that the plan was discussed, which as Board of Aldermen does, that's y'all's purview, and trying to make sure that what's on this site is something you want. What I think gets lost is the HHO. And so we wanted to pull them apart because there is a merit to changing this HHO to better align with the zoning ordinance, regardless of whatever plan's on here. The zoning ordinance has 3 criteria for why an HHO is established: viewshed analysis, steep slopes, contour lines. This site, it's a GIS document. Staff can't go to every site. Our client paid for a detailed analysis, not knowing what was going to happen. Detailed analysis, multiple on-site surveys. These lines that you see are not arbitrary to a design. They are related to certain items on the property. The straight line that comes through is a tree line that staff says, this is the area we can see. We don't want anything to go past that. So we drew a line there. We surveyed this line too. This is not an approximation. This is a surveyed line. The straight line along the bottom that goes along Ash Drive, that's an historic wall that was there, that we put the survey points along that wall. We drew that wall based on recommendations from staff, brought that area into conservation, would bring that area into HHO where it currently isn't now. That area along Mac Hatcher is based on tree canopy and also along steep slopes. So we don't have a plan. We don't know if anything will fit there. We're not sure. We don't want to draw a plan until we know what the new HHO line, and we feel like this HHO line has a merit to be changed based on how the zoning ordinance has written the determination of that boundaries.
Thank you. That's good.
And this is recommended by staff as well from that kind of objective review, not related to, but more aligning with the standards.
Yeah. I got Alderman Brown next, and then Alderman Berger, and then Alderman Peterson.
Yep, yes, sir. I'll be a little bit more direct in my comments, but consistent with what I've said before. I don't have an issue with the lines. I understand why we would change those, but I will say anything that would land, any structure that would land in that area there off of Cool Springs is a non-starter for me. And I'll say this, we have in the last 2 years invested so much money in this area. We have bought land, we have fought for land here, we have worked to get to Roper's Knob, there's so much effort. We've protected this gateway. This is just too important of an area right here. I feel like we're just, scrappily fighting to save this area. And I've said, not only have I said any structure on this entranceway here at Cool Springs and Mac Hatcher's non-starter, but I've consistently said whatever's going to go in there off of Franklin Road had better be pretty spectacular and pretty light, given all that we're doing there. And I still would love to see, quite frankly, I would love to see the owner of that property recognize what the city is trying to do to save that gateway and participate in that. There's plenty of other places to do things. I would love to see something better happen there, quite frankly. So I don't really have an issue with the lines. I just would love to, there just needs to be recognition that it's going to be a really hard row to hoe, at least here in this ward with that area, to do anything too heavy, and certainly anything off of that Mac Hatcher Cool Springs.
See, Alderman Berger's next.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't think you can plan until you know what you've got.
Right.
I think that's smart. I don't have a problem with these lines. I think you should do this. And then you'll know exactly what you have and what you can work with. But with Alderman Brown too, it's really important what goes there. And I think, something better needs to happen there. We don't have anything right now. We don't know. But I think your comment is saying whatever goes there better be good and stellar. And I think your group, from the history of your group that's working with this is what you give us each time. You hear us. And I think I'm not really worried about it. I think you'll bring something pretty stellar that fits that area. And like you said, Alderman Brown, that off of Franklin Road there, you have to be careful how this seems coming into the gateway, because we've done all this work and we've bought this property next to it and all this. So think what happens as you come down Franklin Road is going to be really important as you plan. And I would just say, as you all go back to the drawing board to look at this, I mean, I'm going to support this. I don't see why you shouldn't do this. But I think we're all just saying, and make sure that what you do bring us in the future is that you're hearing us. And I think asking, up front and talking to people on this board and especially the alderman that represents this area is really important. Okay.
Alderman Peterson.
Just to say something specifically, if you're looking on this down toward the bottom and on the left side, there's this orange line there that changed some things, and it's the proposed HHO line. But the other thing is, if you notice, there's some little pieces there that come off of really Ash Drive, which is the street right down below it, and so the people that live on Ash Drive want to see nothing right next to them, and so redrawing that HHO line there really will protect the people that live on Ash Lane. And they want to be protected, and they really appreciate it.
Alderman Caesar.
Good comments, good discussion here. I guess for me, and I think Drake, you almost got there, the blue line, the heavy blue line, is a line that is drawn currently utilizing GIS or analysis without physically being on the property, right? So it's less about us actually going and moving a line that is set in stone and is perfect, and it's more about us potentially considering perfecting that line with boots on the ground, eyes on the ground, to see the way the land really looks when you're standing on the land. Is that fair for us to say staff support that as well?
It's accurate.
I have less concerns about us correcting this line to reflect what actually is there on the ground. I do share some of the comments that others have made about making sure that we don't build a skyscraper at Cool Springs and Mac Hatcher, but that we get a plan and start working towards bringing that plan together to activate that corner of our community in a way that's intentional, not quickly, but intentional, and that appreciates Roper's Knob. I've heard so much about Roper's Knob. How many of the folks in this room have ever been to Roper's Knob or ever actually physically walked on it, right? And we're the minority, right? But it would be exceptional now that we own land kind of in this area to see it come together so that just the people in this room aren't the ones visiting Roper's Knob. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, we need to move along because we've got another item that's going to take a little time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7 is Resolution 2026-12, resolution amending the Middle 8 PUD subdivision to extend the vesting rights for the property located east of Franklin Road, south of Liberty Pike, located at 2090 Liberty Pike. Established public hearing May the 12th, 2026. Any questions about that? Well, go ahead, Joey. I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you. So this is a request to extend the vesting period for Middle 8 PUD subdivision for a further 3 years to allow the applicant to secure any necessary permits and commence site preparation. Just as a reminder, this plan was approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in August of 2023. It includes 275 residential units and a variety of housing types, which equates to 38.19 dwelling units per acre and 3,000 square feet of non-residential space for a site that is comprised of 7.2 acres. There is one modification of standard that was approved to modify the minimum parking standards. A site plan for the property has been approved, but they have not yet pulled any permits or have not prepared the site for any grading or anything. So in general, the plan that was approved still complies with the current ordinance, but if this were to expire, a new plan would have to be brought forth, and that would include new agreements with Parkland as well as new reviews from Planning Commission and Historic Zoning Commission. So we are recommending approval should the Board of Mayor and Aldermen determine the continuation of vested rights is in the best interest of the community, and Planning Commission did so as well. Thank you.
Item 8 is knowledge of progress report on Resolution 2025-44, resolution adopting a plan of services for the annexation of 1288 Lewisburg Pike by the city of Franklin, Tennessee. Established a public hearing for May the 12th, 2026.
I'll keep this brief. This is a state-required progress report for any plan of services that's part of an annexation. This is 1288 Lewisburg Pike, the Gateway Church campus. And to cut right to it, we're fine. We write them to where it's really the developer and the property owner. They have to get the utilities to the site, work with the city on that. They are currently working with the city to extend sanitary sewer. Otherwise, we have met all the other points of the plan of services.
And thank you, Joey. Number 9 is sanitation environmental services cost of service presentation.
So this is an element of our budget preparation that we wanted to share with you and get some feedback as we're working to get a proposed recommended budget to you by early May. This is an update on where we are with our rates for our sanitation, curbside, trash and recycling services. A very, very valuable service, as we all know. We've especially seen that in the last several weeks. But what I think you'll see is a 5-year outlook that is largely inflationary in nature, which is significant given that we have seen significant increases in the tip fees that we experience at the landfill. So we've been able to integrate that into a plan and with some options for you to give us some feedback on tonight. So our Office of Budget and Performance and our Sanitation Environmental Services group will be providing that to you here soon.
In just a second.
I'm so sorry. Oh, it did, okay. So it's likely will be passed by the 28th, so there'll be impact. Okay, good, thank you.
All right, looks like we've got there. Good evening, Board of Mayor and Aldermen. My name is Sky Gerhart. I currently serve as your management fellow for the City of Franklin, and I'm joined tonight by Mark and Nate to bring you some updates on our SES cost of service study that you first saw in 2024. So that was a little bit ago, so a little overview first. In 2024, BOMA passed new sanitation rates that took effect in January of 2025 and January of 2026. These rates allowed the sanitation fund to become self-sustaining and no longer require supplemental transfers from the general fund each year. So now staff have revisited this cost of service study to evaluate the necessary rates to keep the fund self-sustaining past FY26. Expenditures are expected to increase in FY 2027 due to increases in MSW disposal contracts that Nate will touch on shortly. So revisiting these rates now is helping to ensure that the fund remains self-sustaining despite these changes. And we'll dig a little bit deeper into what this means for our residential rates and our commercial tipping fees. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Nate Ridley to give you a little bit of an internal department update.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just to give you a little history and give you some of our accomplishments for FY 2025. We've collected over 2.2 million stops or collection points. We're looking at over 74,000 transferred tons to MSW to the landfill. We're also looking at over 2,800 tons of residential recycling to Marshall County, one of our former vendors, and then total tons of yard waste, not brush, but just regular yard waste, and over 14 tons. And then we've delivered over 400 new MSW or trash containers, and then we've also delivered over 500 containers for recycling bins. We've also successfully implemented the glass recycling program and the cardboard drop-off site. So we have a site at 417 Century Court, and then we have sites that are located all over the city of Franklin that they're catching on pretty good. So we're doing pretty good with that.
The stats Nate shared with us just recently, we saw 19 tons.
Yes, sir. 19
from
tons
the cardboard
for
drop-off so far this year, and a little over 4 tons of glass so far this year. So
Yeah.
they've been well received, and that momentum is
Oh, yeah.
building to give people an outlet for glass and then for larger quantities of cardboard.
And that
nice.
glass number does not include the 30-yard container that we have. We haven't got it serviced yet, so we're looking to get that serviced pretty soon, but we're doing pretty good with that.
And
we're-
those are
we're proud of
revenue
that.
generating for us as well.
Okay. All right, just to give you a little history of how we got here. Just looking at the Bi-County contract, in regards to the Bi-County contract, it will be increasing from our current rate of $20.23 to $29.50 for the second term of the agreement. That will be effective July 1, 2026. This is an important detail that we want you guys to consider. Also, on our landfill contract front, we're in the best possible scenario. Our contract is set to expire June 30th, 2032, which gives us 6 more years under the current terms. And then we're also looking at an option to extend for an additional 5 years. So you're looking at, this provides us the best solid foundation for a long-term planning. We're in the best possible spot with our landfilling. Number 2, regarding our recycling contract with Marshall County, it expired November 2025. We went through a bid process. We have a vendor with Waste Management that we're working with. We're under contract with them almost. One thing I want you to note in this, our contract with Marshall County was $45 a ton. If we had to renew with them, they were asking $65 a ton. In this, what we're looking at is with Waste Management, we're looking at $43.69 a ton. So currently, right now, we're on a month-to-month contract with Waste Management until we get the final deal done with them. We're paying $50 a ton. Thirdly, on this, what I want you to look at is the MBI contract. It is working very well for us. Just couldn't get any better for us. So certainly, we are paying. We're currently paying $28.72 per ton for our hauling, with the additional compaction rate of $1.11. And that's very good. One more thing I want to do before I turn it back over is our landfill rates. Right now, we're looking at the Cedarfield landfill rate, which is C&D, at $17 a ton. We're looking at Waste Connections landfill rates at $42.21 a ton, and then Waste Management in Camden, we're looking at $34.99. So our landfill rates are pretty good, and our hauling rates are pretty good. So we're still within a competitive with the region.
All right, we'll now move into some of our suggested changes for the upcoming years. So first, taking a look at our commercial tipping fees. For context, rates on commercial tipping fees have typically raised $5 every 2 years. But this proposed new increase structure you see on the right would raise the rates $5 next year to $70 a ton, and then $2.50 each year after that through 2031. So these rates allow us to remain competitive with the transfer stations in the area while maximizing our revenue streams that are outside of just increases to residential rates. So we want to make sure that we're looking at both of those avenues equally. The proposed changes here result in $2.8 million in additional revenues in the next 5 years. Also, before we move on from this slide, I just want to note that everything you'll see moving forward does have this potential increases for commercial tipping fees baked into it. So moving forward, we'll be talking about residential rates with these commercial rates you see here baked in. So this slide shows a detailed revenue breakdown since 2023 and then out to projected 2031, again with those proposed commercial rates, but residential rates staying at our current rate of $33 per month. So the only growth you're going to see in that green column for residential revenues is any increase in the customer base. That's just estimated based off of our typical annual customer growth. And so you'll see something to highlight here, that increase in residential revenue that we saw between 2024 and 2025 when the first rate increase went into account, and then more gradual increases that we're expecting moving forward. And then looking at the other side of the coin, expenditures, you'll see again 2023 to projected 2031 here. In personnel, you're going to see gradual growth for inflation at 5% for salaries and 7.5% for benefits. And then on the operations side, you're going to see those inflationary increases as well as the specific contract changes that Nate just mentioned that are baked into these amounts. So those have been accounted for specifically. And then in the capital column, everything up to 2027 is what we have spent in the fund. And then the projected 27 to 2031 capital numbers come in working with our fleet manager, Kim Hammond, on replacement structures for all of the fleet within SES. So you're seeing a range of amount from 1.37 million to about 1.6 million in 2031 to keep replacing all of our equipment as they reach their life cycle end in SES. So then we put those last two slides together, and you can see the outcome of the fund here were residential rates to stay at that $33 a month. So you can see the general fund transfers that we had in 2023 and 2024, and then those drop off in 2025 following the rate increases, and then hopefully remaining off in 2027, but you'll see a deficit start to creep in, so about $500,000 deficit in 2027 there. So with that background information, we're going to move into 5 potential options for residential rates. Again, all of these residential rates do have those commercial tipping fees baked in with them. And this is by no means all of the combinations that are possible in the fund. So we'd love to hear from y'all on different combinations or things you would like to look into. First, option 1 shows what you saw on that summary slide. Again, so no residential changes. The residential rate stays at $33 per month, and you're seeing general fund transfers needed in 2027 beginning at that $520,000 number, and then creeping up as you get towards 2031. Option 2 looks at minimizing the transfers needed by increasing the residential rate $1.50 per year moving forward. This option, going back to that capital conversation we just had, includes the full equipment replacement rates, varying from about 1.4 million in 2027 up to that 1.6 million in 2031. So you can see here that the general fund transfers needed don't completely go away, but they are minimized in this option, and you're ending at about $40.50 in 2031. In option 3, you're also seeing that same rate structure of $1.50 per year increase, but we've put in a little bit of a caveat on the capital. So this showcases a $1 million capital equipment cap, and we've kind of worked with Nate and Mark and Kim in making sure that that would be feasible for our fleet, knowing that it would slightly increase the age of the fleet, but they feel that is feasible, and so I'll kind of turn to them if they want to make any comments on that aspect.
Actually, with having this cap, it'll let you know what you're going to be spending each year. We know we're going to be spending $1 million each year, not to go over $1 million each year, and it's actually going to streamline what we're going to be asking for. We're just going to be looking at the equipment that actually needs to be replaced, and we've been doing a pretty good job of taking care of our equipment and extending the life of the equipment. This is just a little bit more to streamline what we're doing, and then actually to help us keep the rates down. But having $1 million cap is very good for us moving forward, I believe.
So similar to option 2, you see the ending rate in 2031 here as $40.50. Options 4 and 5 move away from that $1.50 increment and into just the full dollar amounts necessary to get as close to break even as possible. So historically, we have kept sanitation rates at those even dollar amounts. So that just showcases here what that would look like. So it's not a consistent amount each year, not $1 every year or $2 every year, but varies based on what is needed in expenditures and revenues. So you'll see we're breaking even or having a surplus in every year except 2029. There's just a $7,000 deficit there. In this option, the rates in 2031 would end at $41 a month. And then, of course, this option also includes that full equipment cost breakdown of the $1.3 to $1.6 million per year. And then I think you can see the trend here. This is that full dollar increase option with the $1 million capital cap that we were discussing in option 3. So this allows us to break even in all years and includes that $1 million cap. Ending rates in 2031 sitting at $40 per month. A little caveat I wanted to note here, you might be wondering, well, 2031, a $322,000 surplus, why can't we make the rate just $39 and still break even? So the opportunity cost of $1 of sanitation rates is a little bit over $350,000 a year. So if you were to lower that number down to $39 a month, you'd probably be sitting at about a $25,000 to $50,000 deficit in the fund that year. So that's just something to keep in mind as we move into discussion. With that, we would note that city staff recommends that the BOMA move forward with exploring an increase in sanitation rates via option 5 in 2027. I'll turn to Mark and Eric to talk a little bit more about their thoughts moving forward, and we can move into discussion.
I think Sky and Nate did a really good job of laying this out for you and where we are. These are largely inflationary. It's how you want to lay it out over time. Option 5 is the recommendation I would offer too as your city administrator. We've been doing some budget work, as you might imagine, getting ready to get you a budget in early May. And if we don't take these actions, we are putting more strain on an already pretty tight general fund. And so especially as you look 3 and 4 and 5 years out, I would strongly recommend that we look at doing this. This is the cost of doing business. We've made the hard decisions to get this to a point where it's truly a self-supporting fund, and we want to continue that so that those rates reflect the cost of delivering the service and doesn't put additional strain on your general fund, which has it competing for dollars for public safety and parks and other services that we really value and want to make sure we have capacity to support in the general fund. It's got to come from somewhere. We've made the policy decision over a lot of years to really make this a self-sufficient fund. When I came on board many years ago now, we were subsidizing this to the tune of almost $4.5 million a year of general fund dollars. So we've now worked it to the point that it is paying its way, and I want to see us continue to do that. That's consistent with what the board's direction has been over those many years. So glad to answer questions. Mark, anything you want to add? All right. So glad to answer any other questions you have. And as Sky said, there are other variations we can do, but this gives you a good sense of what it takes to meet the obligations and keep the fund whole. I will echo what Nate said. We've done a little bit of digging and looking at this and feel that $1 million cap is a pretty reasonable number to work from and sets a mark for the team to know what they have, but also live within those means, and helps us keep those rates from going higher. So that's where we are.
And just a clarifying question that might come up, all of these options do build in effective rates of January 1st, which is where sanitation rates currently operate under.
And clearly $1 to $2 is in that inflationary range, especially when you look at what we're seeing on the tip fee. I applaud the team for keeping those costs in good control.
I might add a little more color to what Eric just said, that in 2007, every single dollar of the property tax went to subsidize solid waste. My recollection was around $5 million.
That, yeah.
And for us to be now, we worked really hard to get this where we're not taking general fund money and subsidizing it. And I applaud all the actions of the board, this board, past boards, for finally getting to this point where we can make it operate like an enterprise fund. So kudos to staff, and I love 5.
They also do such a good job. You never hear anybody complaining about getting their garbage picked up.
Alderman Potts, then I've got Vice Mayor, and then Alderman Brown.
Thank you, sir. I do have a question. As we're looking at all the different options here, I'm looking at it's like a 1 to 2 ratio as far as what residential is paying versus what commercial is paying. I'm just thinking about, and I need you as the subject matter experts to just weigh in on this, and how do we get roughly double the amount for commercial compared to what residential is paying. And if we could just start with that, I'm very interested.
Right now, at Williamson County, for MSW, they're charging $75 a ton. For C&D, they're charging $40 a ton, and then yard waste is $40 a ton.
So the services are fundamentally different.
That's
Yeah,
what I wanted.
The commercial fee is
Yeah.
coming through our transfer station, growing across the scale, and then we, through our hauler, take it up to the landfill.
Right.
The residential service is the trucks that go through the neighborhoods and do the individual curbside service. So they're kind of different animals there, and we are trying to maximize what we think the market will bear on the commercial side. So we try to be about as aggressive as we can be. It is a convenient service for those folks, and so we see that it's valuable. It's a little bit of trying to gauge the elasticity of that rate. So we're trying to put as much on the bone as we can, or get as much off the bone, however we want to say that, to make sure that we're trying to lessen the impact on our residents by maximizing what we get from the commercial side.
And that's where my question therein lies, is how do we compare to other municipalities here within Williamson County and or like similar size municipalities within the state?
Right now, we're very
Just for commercial.
Just for commercial, we're very competitive. I gave you some of the landfill rates that we had. They're similar to transfer station rates also. Like I said before, with Williamson County, you're looking at $75 a ton for MSW. And then when I say C&D, it's construction and demolition debris that you're bringing in. And then the yard waste is 40. So like we said, we're trying to get a good even balance to where we're keeping our customers and they'll still keep coming back to us. We're not pricing ourselves out of the market, which will make everything lopsided, because with our transfer station supplementing our residents, we want to kind of keep a good balance of that, but also keep our customers and then make it a gradual increase just as, stay within inflation within the market.
I would just challenge us to really look at the growth of commercial that's occurring along 65 from the north part of our municipal border all the way to the south, and trying to increase those funds as much as possible before you hit that tipping point, because I really do think that more of this burden should be carried on the commercial piece than rather on the residential.
We hear you. We are in the same
Yes,
mindset.
sir.
We try to maximize it. Nate will tell you the first question that Mark and I ask is, can it go up? Can we push it more sooner, quicker? And we're trying to gauge what the market will bear. We're fairly unique in that we have this transfer station. There's not a lot of other options, so we want to maximize that, and it's fairly convenient for a lot of these haulers. So we recognize that we have a good product, if you will, or a good service that's available on the commercial side too. But most of our other neighboring municipalities aren't in this business.
Eric, if I can add to what you're saying.
They hand that off to the private side, and those rates go where they go, and the services are not nearly as extensive.
Actually, the surrounding counties, the surrounding areas are coming to Franklin to see how we do it, because nobody else can do it like we do it. So they're coming to us and say, how do y'all do this? So it's kind of hard to compare, but you have people coming in and say, we like what you guys are doing. Within the past 2 years, we've had several different people from McMinnville, from Kingsport, from East and West Tennessee coming to us to say, how do you do this? What do we need to do? And in constant contact with different municipalities of how we do our business here. So we're top of the line. A lot of people call us, outside of Franklin, they call it the Cadillac service. So this is what, we have a very good service here, and we are in we have a transfer station. We have a recycling program. We're able to pick up our own garbage and we don't have to contract it out. So we're in a good spot. But we could definitely look at the market and make sure we stay within the market and stay competitive also. Yes, sir.
So I'll end with this. I know we're in a great spot, but I'm going to challenge us even harder, because right now, if we've got, call it 75,000 people passing through Franklin and using our commercial businesses, that's an opportunity right there over the coming years.
Yes, sir.
I think I had the vice mayor next, and then Alderman Brown.
This looks like mostly driven by capital needs, like the changes. I mean, not mostly. Maybe the rates Well, we got pretty good locked-in
Yeah.
rates though on our landfills. So really,
Well, they just went
capital-
up pretty significantly. That's part
Well,
of what
they
we're
were planned by
absorbing. Yeah.
contract. It wasn't not. We would. We knew-
I think they're a little higher than we expected when we did this for you a couple years ago.
I thought they were locked in.
They were for that time period, but then they can go up at this stage, right? They may want to.
Because I thought we locked them in for X number of years.
Well, we had locked it in, but they increased with inflation using the CPI chart, CPI index.
This number was outside
But
of
this
that
number
window.
was outside of the index, and this is the second term of the contract, and in that, it increases to that number.
Okay.
It says, in the contract, it says equal to or whatever the gate rate is, and the gate rate is higher than what the actual number is in the contract, so.
So this new number does go past a standard inflationary calculation. We had that in the previous term, and now they get a chance to sort of ratchet it up essentially to their broader rate. We had a kind of a preferred rate go before this.
The rate we had with Bi-County a handful of years ago was ridiculously low, and they couldn't maintain operations that way. That's how we ended into these contract negotiations to begin with, ramp up to what kind of the market would bear, what they can actually operate under. And that's kind of where
But we
second term.
we did sort of work that rate in exchange for years of capacity out. That's what
Correct.
Nate referred to. You got
11 years.
You got another 11 years of capacity, which quite frankly, in this business, capacity and rate are equally important. We want to manage rate as best we can, but securing capacity over the long haul is really, really important.
So trying to understand like what's I mean, the rate, the disposal rate, our contracts is a big deal, part of that. But the capital is what I was in the slide, number 7, and replacement, because we're capping some capital.
Yes.
What have we been spending on capital for this department regularly? Is $1 million more than normal, or is that less than normal?
We're usually in the range of either 1.4 or 1.7 million. Sometimes, I believe one time it was close to 2 million.
Because those are expensive trucks.
It is,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's been fairly inconsistent. And before we got to where we were more self-sufficient, that was one of the big things, is to level out that capital investment, have that be more consistent. The swing in whether we met costs and revenues or whether we needed a general fund subsidy largely was driven by how much capital we were purchasing.
So I guess that's where I'm trying, when I look at these options, I'm trying to determine if a $1 million cap is like a good thing or about, I mean, that's going to set us back on capital or
That's
set
a good
us ahead?
question.
I think it probably sounds like it's going to set us back.
Actually, when you look at it, we've gotten to a point with our capital where we're good with our fleet and management. There were some good years. You guys were very good to us, and we got everything that we needed. Our oldest vehicles are 2029 side loader that's actually on the road. So
2019.
what
2019?
2019. My bad. I got so many numbers running through my head. Yeah, I'm running. So
That will be true at some point.
yes. So what we're looking at now is we have good, viable backup trucks to put on the road, and then you're also looking at 18 to 24 months in getting a vehicle on the road. And if we can pinpoint the vehicles that we need at that time, staying under $1 million will be greatly beneficial to us because our fleet is in good shape right now.
So that is good. So I'm trying to, because which option, kind of matters. If $1 million, because what's going to happen in 2030 plus 1 plus is just look around at the counties around us and what the hair on fire that they're in. It's coming for us. Now we're going to try to prevent it and hedge it as much as possible. But make no mistake, it's coming for us, for this board. And so what I don't want to do is, with that in mind, and all that's going to go to the ratepayer. So I want to make sure that we're, whichever we choose is really anticipating that horizon. Because it's, and what can we do? Does this position us better? Which positions us best for that thing that is going to happen?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do probably every 2 to 3 years, we're going to relook at this. We think that at this point in time, $1 million cap on capital is a viable way to approach it. This is in chats with, or talks with Kim Hammond, the fleet manager, Nate, his team, and based on what we have as far parts of the fleet right now, we feel like we're in good shape. And we think, as Nate mentioned earlier, they take really good care of the equipment. If we see a decline where we're having trucks off the road more than we need them, then that's something that we need to monitor very closely.
We just don't want our equipment lining up and being out of shape, and also our fees doubling because there's nowhere else to send the trash.
No, I understand.
And I think that's kind of my biggest concern is long term is
That's right.
keeping the fleet good. Do what you need to do to keep the fleet good, because when that day of reckoning happens, it's just not going to be pretty.
No, I understand.
Well, I think I would add a quick note to yours before I recognize Alderman Brown is that really our big challenge is more diversion from the landfill.
Yep.
That's ultimately what we need to be doing is more recycling. So that's a message to our citizens, participate in recycling, which we do have good participation.
Yeah, we have an over 60% participation in the curbside, and then what the SES team has done with these drop-off sites helps us with glass, which we can't collect curbside, and then the larger quantities of cardboard. So we're providing some more outlets, and those initial performance numbers I think are better than we expected. So that I think you'll see those built.
And we're going to continue to look at options to make sure we keep the rates down. Yes.
Alderman Brown.
I agree this needs to be self-sustaining. I agree. I've never heard a service bragged on more than your own, and you guys do a great job, and we want to keep that service high. I agree we need to stay ahead of this so we don't have to keep catching up. We need to continue to keep looking at it. But I will also say what I said 2 years ago. I continue to be concerned about our fixed income seniors. I really wish as a city we would come up with a policy. We did property tax increases, water increases, trash increases. I think younger families like my own, we should carry a little more weight, and our fixed income seniors, I wish we had a policy to give them a break. We just hit them hard the last few years, and I think we ought to be looking at that. And it may not seem like a much for a few bucks a year, but it does matter. And I wish we would be looking at that.
We do that? Do you want to describe that? We provide a discount for people that are on the property.
The tax relief programs, they do receive this benefit for sanitation.
For sanitation.
The full amount.
Full amount.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. On sanitation.
On sanitation, yes. And we've been doing that for some time.
The seniors that qualify for the tax program also receive this service.
But that's a really small number. That's
Do
not.
we have buck a bag anymore?
Yes.
Yes.
Still have that?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't get, they still have to pay their monthly fee.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for additional
That's additional stuff.
capacity.
You know, may I speak? I'm sorry.
If Alderman Brown, yeah, go ahead, Alderman Berger.
Sorry about that. I'm not interested in like putting a cap on people who are 65 and above. I mean, how about older adults? I mean, I just have his constituent that he wanted to recycle, but he couldn't recycle. And, $75 just for the can was pushing it for him right now. And so we were able to do something to get that. I mean, outside the city, we were able to provide that for him in a way. But it was brought to my attention. But there's senior citizens who are 75, 80 years old. Mm-hmm. And, some of them would like to be able to make sure they recycle, and they'd like to also, but they're, sometimes they don't even have a bag a week. They've got maybe one bag in there. I mean, we don't only have one bag. We recycle all the time. But I would think that we could take a look around the country and see if there's anything anyone's doing, or if not, come up with something ourselves. And maybe just up it to the people who are over 80 or not just on fixed income. I mean, and if we have wealthy people who are over 80 and they want to pay the full fee, fine, let them pay a full fee. Ask them if they'll continue to do that. I mean, we don't have to make that, I just think we ought to look at it. Something new.
Alderman Caesar.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm familiar with the rebate program or the tax deferral or the fee deferral program for senior citizens or people that are on a fixed income. How many people do we know participate in that annually, monthly?
It's an annual eligibility that the county trustee determines for us. I believe last year it was around, was it 220?
I think it was 200 or 300.
240,
Yeah, and
300.
I just wanted to highlight that
Yeah.
point because
Yeah.
while it is there, it's misleading to say that it's well used by the numbers of people who maybe could. So perhaps we could do a better job communicating that this is available for those who live on a fixed income. And I think Mayor said something really important about diversion. I'm somebody that really supports and appreciates the fact that you have a glass recycling place and you have a place that's relatively close to my house that I can take the cardboard that doesn't fit in my bin. And this would be maybe one point on that. If there's something that limits us from a little bit larger recycling bin, I may be the only one, but I find myself jumping up and down in that blue bin, and I'm afraid it's going to tump over with me in it. And I know that other communities have an equal size recycling and waste bin, and if diversion is an opportunity for us to save money, let's make it. And as long as the bin's not 4 times more, if you go up a step, then let's think about that. And then the final piece, I share concerns of Alderman Brown but I would extend it beyond just the senior citizen population because there's young people that live in townhomes that I probably quadruple on a weekly basis their monthly output of trash. They're not putting curbs or they're not putting bushes and shrubs on the street. They're not, trying to feed 4 kids in a house that seem to eat through all the cardboard boxes and just leave waste around. And I don't want to get into, just to be really clear, Nate, you weren't here in the conversation a few years ago, but one of the things I was really interested in is could we come up with a way that folks that tend to live in a house where there's fewer people could pay a different rate. And I think if you live in a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house, it's not definite, but it's likely that you're going to be disposing of more than if you live in a house that's under 2,500 square feet. And I know I'm seeing Eric's face going, holy cow, how do we implement that?
No, we've researched that.
Yeah, and maybe the cost increase when you do that, but I gotta believe in the spirit of fairness and applying, if we're trying to get to a fee for service, I'm getting a heck of a deal at $50 a month. And there's people that are in a neighborhood across the street from me that I feel like are subsidizing my trash. And I don't think that's fair. And so I'd love for us to find a way to find a middle ground and use diversion as a way to support that. So, thank you, Mayor.
The challenge with that is so much of this cost is fixed. If you have 1 bag of trash or 8 bags of trash, most of that cost is the same because it's the truck, it's the container, it's the people that are driving the truck. So I get what you're saying and it's logical, but the reality is that increment, and we did a bunch of research because you said the same thing 3 years ago. And it's not wrong, but the reality is that margin is pretty small within that volume piece, that it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And the sentiment is great, it's wonderful, but the reality is so much of these costs are already baked in, and we have a responsibility to assign the cost if you want to make this self-sufficient, and that's what we're doing here. The path for seniors is one that is need-based. They've got to qualify based on income. So I think that provides somewhat of an opportunity there. We will certainly promote that more, and we want to do everything we can for diversion in these other elements as well. But I just don't want to. I don't want to hold out a ton of promise.
It costs you $40 to show up at my house, right? I understand
most
that.
of that number is baked in, regardless of the quantity you give us. Even though tip fees matter, it's so much of it's already baked in.
Alderman Barnhill, change your mind?
Yeah, I changed my mind. We answered the questions because I was going to say that the fixed cost on this is the largest portion of the cost that's going into this. But also I would say this kind of on the other side. We just got to be having explained to us why this is the Cadillac of SES. And therefore, if you've got the Cadillac, it costs you more to have that. So if you don't want a $40 fee, then maybe it needs to be a Chevrolet instead of a Cadillac. I don't know. But if you you pay for what you got. And I don't think we're having any complaints much on the service. So I'm looking, and I do think, because I went through the portion of it when we were pulling from the general fund, and I didn't remember exactly the numbers that we had on it, but I know we were subsidizing the sanitation department with several $1 million. And the discussion at that particular time, I still remember one or two of the aldermen saying, we want to leave it like it is. Their comment was this: your residential rate is not tax deductible. Property tax at that particular time was an itemized item on income tax. So they were looking to be able to keep it on that. I didn't think that was necessarily a particularly great argument. So I would much rather have it where we can see it self-sustaining than it is to have it buried into the property tax rate that we've got. So for those who don't want $40 here, you can have several cents on the other side. And that's not where I want to be.
Okay, item 10 is ordinance 2026-05 to amend the Franklin Municipal Code Title 24 Special Assessment District to add Chapter 5 establishing policies and procedures relating to consideration of petitions for the creation of real estate infrastructure development districts.
This is a pretty straightforward shift. This is really the mechanics of how we do it. We've been drafting it as a resolution and statement of board policy, and kind of reviewing this with Shauna. The decision or the recommendation was made that it would be cleaner, clearer to make it an ordinance. That way it's easier to find and easier to track than a resolution passed by the board in 2026. This would just be more baked into your ordinance, is a cleaner, clearer way to do it. We are pretty confident that you'll be able to act on the 28th because things are moving through the state legislature. I think the Senate took action today.
No, they
Is that
voted
right? Or
a while back, but the House voted at their calendar rules today,
Okay.
and it goes to calendar tomorrow. So then it would probably, from there, if it passes, go straight to the House. Senate passed a few weeks ago, so we knew that, but we just haven't been before you to tell you that, but we're very close.
So we expect, you had deferred it to the 28th for action. We will replace the resolution with this ordinance and then you can act. We also will have on the work session as a first kind of run through the Armistead proposal for an IDD. So you'll have a chance to talk about that and staff give you a review as well and the applicant there. And so you'll be able to test drive it on the 28th as well.
Alderman Brown.
My only question, because I think it probably is right, my only question is, we've said we don't want to be handing this out to everybody. We want to be very specific. It's got to really meet some criteria. There's times we're going to use it. There's times we're definitely not. It felt like having it be a resolution made it more flexible. Having it be an ordinance feels like it's going to be, it's a lot more rigor. It's going to require more modifications. Is it going to lock us in more? I guess is my question.
It's the exact same language.
Okay.
It's just putting an ordinance, not a resolution. And that's so we can find it. So you have the same ability to tweak it like you would the resolution. We just have had enough experience over the years that sometimes resolutions get sort of lost in the shuffle. When you put it in the ordinance, it is memorialized and it's there for you. So there's really no more effort for you to tweak it or learn from it or change it. So it's really just a better form.
Okay.
We're adjourned.
All right.
10 minutes.
He's cutting us off.